Your reaction to this balloon, first and foremost.
Well, letting a Chinese surveillance balloon lazily drift over America is like seeing a robber on your front porch and inviting him in, showing him where you keep your safe, where you keep your guns, where your children sleep at night, and then politely asking him to leave. It makes no sense. It makes us look weak and flat-footed on the world stage. Furthermore, if these Bloomberg reports are true, that the Biden administration deliberately tried to keep the American people in the dark so as to salvage Secretary Blinken's trip to Beijing, that's unacceptable. Allowing this to happen in order to preserve a photo op with Xi Jinping, who's committing genocide, that's foreign policy malpractice. And let's assume that the balloon was mostly harmless or we neutralized it. Do we think that the timing was coincidental? It's far more likely that they deliberately timed this in order to send a message as Blinken was preparing for his trip. And the message is, look what we can do to you and get away with. Your corporations, your career politicians, they will come crawling back. And so the message I have for the Biden administration is, don't fall for the Chinese Communist Party charm offensive. It's a farce. It's a bedtime story they tell out-of-touch global elites at Davos. It's time to push back before it's too late, before something far more dangerous than a balloon is flying over American territory. This isn't the last time we're going to see a Chinese probe. There's other things we need to do here, Maria. We need to kick PLA-affiliated researchers off American universities. We need to make sure that CCP affiliates can't buy land next to sensitive military bases in America. And we need to shut down what are effectively CCP police stations here on American soil. This is unacceptable. We need to defend American sovereignty.
Because it seems that you are up an uphill battle here with regard to corporate America. I mean, you have investment funds right now, as we speak. You've got the Thrift Fund, which is the 401k for government employees investing in Chinese companies. You've got a ton of ETFs and index funds. You've also got pension funds investing in the very companies that are tied to the CCP that may turn around and turn their armament and guns on America. Your thoughts on what you can do and accomplish with this new committee?
Well, the message I have for corporate America or Wall Street who want to continue sort of business as usual with China is that we should not be in the business of funding communist genocide. And we certainly should not be in the business of funding our own destruction by sending money to Chinese military-affiliated companies. So I understand this is complex. I understand that for over 2 decades, we've pursued China's global integration into the world economy, and it did not moderate their behavior. And I understand that this thing is not going to change on a dime, but there are sensible things we need to do to reclaim our economic independence. Maria, imagine if we found ourselves in a kinetic confrontation with China over Taiwan, and they cut off the export of advanced pharmaceutical ingredients, as they threatened to do in the early stage of the pandemic in order to plunge us into a sea of coronavirus, was the phrase that they used. Yeah. Would we be able to deter? This is about defending ourselves from aggression. So we are going to have to find a way to onshore the production of key goods that we can't afford to depend on China for, such as microelectronics, such as rare earths, as well as ensure that we are not unwittingly or wittingly funding our own destruction.
Well, you also have America's premier venture capital fund, Sequoia, arguably run by a communist Chinese leader. Your thoughts on Sequoia?
Well, Sequoia is incredibly concerning, and on the Select Committee, we're obviously going to be looking into that. We're building kind of an investigative team right now, and there's some good work that's been done in past Congresses that hasn't seen the light of day yet that we're hoping to build upon. But the bottom line is this. People don't understand the way in which the Chinese Communist Party uses something called United Front work to corrupt our domestic institutions. United Front work is this combination of intelligence operations and influence operations and economic coercion that they use to buy off foreign elites and promote stories that help the Communist Party and eliminate stories that hurt the Communist Party. We need a massive strategy for countering United Front work, because it's not just Sequoia, it's not just various asset managers, it's American universities, it's other educational institutions across the board. For too long, we've let this soft form of corruption to go forward, and that's what we're going to have to tackle on the Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party.
Well, you mentioned universities. An anonymous Chinese person donates almost $60 million to the University of Pennsylvania, and then Penn is able to shut down the China Initiative, which was the very vehicle that the U.S. was using to announce a string of indictments for those people who were involved in surveillance and stealing intellectual property. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think it reveals the broader problem here, which is that too many American universities are desperate for CCP money. The Trump administration started enforcing something called Section 117 of the Higher Education Act, which requires disclosure of gifts in excess of $250,000. And what did they discover? $6.5 billion worth of previously undisclosed donations. And then when the Biden administration came into office, suddenly those disclosures stopped. So either the Chinese money spigot turned off, which is highly unlikely, or they're simply not enforcing that section of the law. And then when you dig into these individual gifts, invariably you find a connection to the United Front Work Department or some CCP official tied to that money. It comes with strings attached. So we have to enforce the law. We have to eliminate Confucius Institutes. And a lot of the Confucius Institutes, amidst previous crackdowns, simply rename themselves to get away from the scrutiny. We have to protect our academic freedom and our students, particularly Chinese students, from transnational repression by the Chinese Communist Party.